Jimmy B on ESPN 620.
That's right. Howard joins us now from on the right Toyota guest lane, that is. We're out here at Twin Peaks at Deer Valley. Howard, when you look at some of these coaching changes, which one do you feel is in line to have the most success faster? Would you say Vrabel for the Patriots, Schottenheimer, the Cowboys, Johnson, Bears, Pete with the Vegas Raiders? Of those four, which one do you think will have the most success first? That's the way I should have asked it.
Yeah,
in a roundabout way.
It's a great thought and a great question. My first reaction is Ben Johnson to the Bears, because it's a pretty good roster that they have. Obviously, they need to do some things. And this was a team that was playing pretty well at the beginning of the season. And then the roof fell in after that crazy Hail Mary loss to the Commanders. And so I think with Ben Johnson there, if he can do with Caleb Williams what he obviously did with Jared Goff, then that's a team that can show some pretty good improvement. Of course, the caveat to that is how tough that division is. And so, we'll see how that plays out. I think the Pete Carroll one to the Raiders is very intriguing, but the issue there is, how can you say if it'll be successful when you don't even know yet who their quarterback will be?
Yep.
And so that one I think is obviously an interesting one to watch. Vrabel, same thing in New England. They have the quarterback. They believe they have the quarterback in Drake May, and they brought in obviously Josh McDaniels to run the offense. The key is, or the question is, the players around them, because that wasn't a very good roster overall last year. But they still played tough, and they still were competitive in a bunch of games. And so I think they could definitely have some, pretty good improvement. I'm not going to say improvement like the Commanders did this past season, but they could certainly have some pretty good improvement if they come up with, more and better players to put around the quarterback and improve other aspects of that roster.
Had this debate with our fine technical director and our aficionado Cowboy fan, Connor Collins, back in the studio about the Cowboys with Schottenheimer. You got the quarterback. You have pieces around you, but to your point, I believe, Howard, I initially thought Ben Johnson too, because of the quarterback, and they're kind of right there. But then there's the Cowboys. They're so tempting because they're right there, but can you trust them to have the success that we all seem that they should have?
No, that's exactly the question. And I've, it's always hard to put a finger on the intangibles and how much impact they really have. And to me, it's always a difficult organization to assess when the coach isn't the face of the franchise and the quarterback isn't the face of the franchise. The owner is.
Yes.
Because he makes himself the face of the franchise. And I've always wondered and believe, but also wondered if it's accurate, how much of an effect that has on that team. When there's got to be guys in that locker room, players and everyone. They when he does his 2 radio interviews a week, or he speaks to the media after games and has a big scrum around him. There has to be eyes rolling in the locker room. Oh, here goes Jerry again, right? And does that really have an impact on winning and losing? Hard to say. I mean, they've had successful regular seasons in the last few years before this past season, but then it doesn't happen in the playoffs. And I know Brian Schottenheimer decently. I was in St. Louis when he was a coach there twice. In fact, his first year as a coach in his career was as a lowly assistant on Dick Vermeil's staff in 1997. I think the guy, he's never really been mentioned for jobs, but he's a quality offensive coach. So I think he can, get that offense going again as long as Dak Prescott stays healthy, as long as the line plays well. CD Lamb, and like you said, they've got a lot of talent. They got to improve the running game, but that's a team that has a pretty solid roster now. Micah Parsons, another guy. So that's what I'm going to watch really interestingly. Because I like Brian. It's nothing, I think that it's nice that he's getting a shot, but we'll see how he's able to navigate with an organization that where Jerry Jones is the guy who's always front and center.
Let me give an over-under. Over-under 24 hours before Kellen Moore is named the new head coach of the Saints after the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Yeah, it looks like that's the way that's trending. And I know a lot of people say, well, the Cowboys could have waited for him. Well, I mean, he's the latest boy wonder, obviously. And, he's a good coach. There's no doubt about it. And so people say, well, Cowboys should have waited for him because he's been there and all those things. Well, Schottenheimer's been there the last couple of years too. So is there any true evidence that we know that he'll be a better head coach than Brian Schottenheimer will be? The one thing we do know is, once again, another question, you're taking that job with a certain level of faith that they're going to supply you with a quarterback because it doesn't look like it's going to be Derek Carr. And so who's going to be the guy that you go with? And how much chance does that give you to be successful? Because you know that after a couple of years, if it's not successful, you're probably, maybe not probably, but there's a chance you're out of there because it didn't work. And so that's going to be one down the road. Now, maybe they get the guy. Maybe they find a way to get the guy who comes in and is their answer, like other teams have found. But obviously, we don't know that at this moment.
Howard Balzer's our guest on the Right Toyota guest line. Howard, with the upcoming draft, and everybody wants to know quarterbacks. And for the last few years, the quarterback out of college was pretty good. The crop was pretty good. This year, it doesn't seem like that. You have two top names, Shadur Sanders and Cam Ward. But is there somebody else out there, say like a Jackson Dart, anybody else that you could toss in that might be a surprise QB that might go late in the first round?
Well, I think it could be Dart. I think that while this year's class, on paper at least, when people are saying isn't what last year's was, and a lot of experts have said, well, if a guy like Drake May was in this year's draft, he'd be the first quarterback taken, when last year he was the third. Well, how much of a difference is that truly? I mean, you're the third overall pick in the draft, but so much of it, I mean, heck, I thought last year that people weren't even talking about Bo Nix, and yet the Saints, quote, surprised everybody by taking him
2.5,
starting every game as a rookie and helping that team get into the playoffs. And so much of it, sometimes it's better to go in the middle to the end of the round because you're going to a better team. Now, does that team need a quarterback? That's a big question. Obviously, the Broncos did, and it wasn't that late in the draft. But so much of it is timing. I mean, who do you what's the team around you when you get there? Who's the coach? Who's all those things? And so, but there will be guys. I don't know if it would be first round, but there'll be guys probably taking those first few rounds. I haven't looked at it that closely yet. I'll be doing it a lot more, after the Super Bowl. But
2 minutes.
There are some other pretty good guys there, and there'll probably be one, we don't know who, that will come out and may play better than either Sanders or Ward. Again, depending on where they end up.
You've covered a lot of coaches over the years, and I will say this, Howard, but what is it about Andy Reid? You've covered him for many years that you just come to appreciate year in and year out. That may not be something that's on the field, or maybe it's an intangible that's shined on the field.
Well, I think the intangible is just like he's this big old teddy bear, and we kind of see it in the commercials now that he's a part of, and his relationship with players, and he obviously knows what it takes to win. Puts a good staff together, and so much of the Chiefs' success, certainly the last couple of years, Steve Spagnuolo, who last year set a record. He's the only coordinator, offensive or defensive, in NFL history that has been a part of 4 Super Bowl winning teams, and now he has a chance to be a part of 5th. So, people are loyal to him. But the other factor, obviously, with Andy Reid that helps make him successful is, he's the winningest coach in Eagles history, the winningest coach in Chiefs history, and he had basically 2 quarterbacks the whole time in both those places. Donovan McNabb, maybe not a Hall of Famer, but darn good quarterback, and now
you guys are clear to start wrapping.
So that goes a long way in terms of your ability, your ability to win. And he certainly knew, the secret sauce, if you will, of how to get the best out of Patrick Mahomes while also letting him be himself. And I think that's a big thing about any head coach, finding that way to let players be themselves, get the most out of them, and then all mesh it together in the team framework.
What are you working on, Howard? What can we look forward to seeing?
Well, I had a story, Cards Wire, haven't been writing as much, a little break here, but
good.
I had a story this week on, with the apparent departure of defensive line coach Derek LeBlanc, which, probably doesn't raise too many eyebrows in the market. Not many people know the assistants who do such a big job. What I did, I broke down 25 different players that were either on the roster or the practice squad on the defensive line the last 2 seasons, and 21 of those 25 played in games. And there were 8 guys that missed a combined number of 72 games on injured reserve. I mean, I thought this guy did a pretty good job with not so much what he was handed, but what happened because of all the rotating pieces. But I guess those guys have an eye on someone else to come in. But anyway, I had a story on that. We'll be doing some other things, about. But hey, the thing that's amazing about this off season, guys, is that it's only 3 weeks from Tuesday that the combine will begin in Indianapolis. So that'll really start ratcheting it up for the off season, which is right around the corner.
And are you done, Lindy's? Are you almost done?
Just to kind of start, I have a good routine of what I do when the season ends, with getting things in order and organizing it and getting the pieces together for everything that will go in that magazine. And it's funny you ask that, because I always say, I got some time here. I got some time. Well, production week at Lindy's is about the second week in May. Wow. It sounds like a long time away, but that's 3 months.
Yeah.
A little over 3 months. So it goes by very, very quickly.
We appreciate you, man. Thanks for the time today.
All right, guys, take care.
That's Howard Balzer. You can follow him on X at xbalzer721, part of SiriusXM NFL Radio and CardsWire for USA Today Sports. We'll give you our update on the State 48 Roofing It's Your